Welcome to Nightmare Lullabies, where the line between dreams and nightmares blurs. Here we share spine-tingling stories that blend the thrill of horror with the calm of sleep, perfect for those who love a little fright before drifting off. If you love horror that lingers in the shadows of your mind, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more haunting bedtime stories. Hit the like button and subscribe if you're brave enough. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you'll be the first to know when a new nightmare has been unleashed. And before you let sleep take you, tell us where you're tuning in from in the comments below. We'd love to see how far our nightmares reach across the globe. Rest if you can. Now our story begins. "What's your favorite slot machine?" I asked, trying to keep the conversation light. Her name was Linda, a middle-aged woman with a penchant for pearls and a perpetual smile that never quite reached her eyes. She had been a regular at the casino for as long as I had been working here. She would always sit at the same machine, playing the same game, smoking the same brand of cigarettes, and leaving with the same amount of money she came with. It was a strange form of consistency that had become a comforting background noise to my otherwise monotonous shifts as a security guard. But now the clanking of slot machines and the murmur of the crowds had been replaced by a heavy silence. The only sounds were the occasional groan and the distant thud of a body slumping against the floor. I had been stuck in the security room for 3 days, watching the infection spread like wildfire across the gaming floor. The once bustling casino now resembled a macabre playground, with chairs overturned and slot machines flashing in a deserted dance of despair. The air conditioning had given out on the first day, and the heat had been building steadily since. The smell of sweat and fear lingered, even though the living had mostly cleared out. I had a stash of water bottles and a couple of protein bars to keep me going, but the isolation was starting to get to me. My eyes burned from staring at the flickering screens, and my mind played tricks with the shadows, turning them into the monsters that now roamed outside my door. The last time I checked, the infected had breached the main entrance, their teeth bared in a silent snarl. The sight had sent a chill down my spine. These weren't the glamorous undead of Hollywood. They were my colleagues, my patrons, my friends, reduced to ravenous creatures that craved the taste of flesh. I had seen enough to know that a single bite meant the end of everything that made us human. Now, the decision to leave was no longer a matter of if, but when. I checked my makeshift barricade for the 100th time, a flimsy collection of office chairs and a desk. It wasn't going to hold for long. Outside, the once vibrant neon lights had dimmed to an eerie glow, casting long shadows across the floor. The city of Detroit had gone quiet, swallowed by the darkness that had consumed it. My hand hovered over the walkie-talkie, the weight of its silence a stark reminder of the world that had moved on without me. I knew that when I stepped out of this room, I would be stepping into the jaws of the beast. Yet, I also knew that if I didn't move soon, I would become just another victim of this hellish nightmare. The security camera flickered, and for a brief moment, I saw Linda's machine. It was still flashing, as if waiting for her to return. I took a deep breath and whispered a silent goodbye to the ghost of normalcy that lingered in the air. It was time to face the music and the monsters. I checked my handgun, the cold metal a comforting weight in my grip. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my eye on the surveillance feed. It was a figure in the kitchen, a place I had assumed was as abandoned as the rest of the casino. The figure was human, alive and uninfected. My heart pounded in my chest. It was a young woman, maybe in her early 20s, her hair matted with sweat and her eyes wide with fear. She was moving with purpose, trying to stay low and avoid detection. Without wasting a second, I grabbed the intercom receiver and spoke into it, my voice echoing through the desolate halls. "Hello? Can you hear me? I'm in the security office." Her head snapped up and she froze for a moment before darting a look around. She was definitely listening. I could see the hope flicker in her eyes. "I've been watching the cameras," I continued. "I can help you. Stay where you are." My eyes darted to the monitors, searching for the nearest group of the infected. The heat had driven them into a frenzy, and their movements were erratic and unpredictable. I needed a plan, and fast. The kitchen was a maze of cold metal and steamy heat, not an ideal place to hide. But if she could just hold on a little longer, I might be able to get her to safety. Listen carefully, I began, trying to keep my voice calm and steady. I'm going to start the emergency sirens and then turn on all the slot machines. That should draw the infected away from your location. Once the coast is clear, I'll guide you to me. I watched as she nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. My thumb hovered over the siren button, and with a deep breath, I pushed it down. The wail pierced the silence like a banshee's scream, sending a shiver down my spine. On the screen, the infected snapped to attention, their heads swiveling in the direction of the sound. As the chaos grew, I saw the woman's chance. "Now!" I shouted into the intercom. "Move, stick to the right wall, and stay low." Her eyes locked onto the screen, showing the route to the security office. She took a deep breath and disappeared from the camera's view. The sirens wailed on, and I hoped to whatever God was left in this city that it was enough. With a flick of a switch, I turned on every slot machine, filling the air with the cacophony of artificial jingles and flashing lights. The infected were drawn in like moths to a flame, leaving a clear path for her. My heart was racing now, and beads of sweat trickled down my forehead. I whispered words of encouragement to myself, willing her to be safe. The minutes stretched into an eternity as I watched the screens, waiting for any sign of her. Then I saw her. She was moving fast, weaving through the aisles of slot machines like a ghost. The infected were still distracted by the lights and sounds, but it wouldn't be for long. "You're almost there," I murmured, my voice strained with tension. The corridor grew closer, and the door to the security office was in sight. I leaned in, willing her to move faster. Just a few more steps and she would be safe. But just as she was about to make it, a figure stumbled into view. It was a man, his eyes glazed and his mouth open in a silent scream. I swore under my breath and reached for the intercom. "Look out!" I shouted, but it was too late. The infected had spotted her. The man lunged, and she stumbled, dropping to the ground. In an instant, she was on her back, kicking and screaming. The infected man's teeth snapped at the air just millimeters from her neck. I couldn't just watch. I had to help her. With a roar of desperation, I threw open the door to the security office. The stale air of the casino rushed in, and the sirens seemed to grow louder. My handgun was at the ready as I sprinted towards the struggle. As I approached, I could see the terror etched on her face. But she wasn't just lying there, waiting to die. She was fighting with everything she had, her eyes full of the kind of fire that I hadn't seen in a long time. The infected man was relentless, his teeth snapping and drool flying as he tried to get a piece of her. I raised my gun, aiming for his head, but the confined space and the chaos of the fight made it difficult. He was too close to her, and I didn't want to risk hitting her. "Keep fighting," I yelled, trying to be heard over the sirens. "I'm right here!" Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, she stopped struggling, her expression a mix of relief and disbelief. That was all the opening I needed. I squeezed the trigger, and the infected man's head jerked back with a sickening crack. He collapsed to the ground, his body going limp. The woman scrambled away from him, her chest heaving with panic. "Thank you," she gasped, her voice trembling. "What's your name?" "Jim," I said, reaching out a hand to help her up. "Security guard, what's yours?" "Karen," she managed, taking my hand. Her grip was firm, her eyes still wide with fear. "Thank you, Jim." The sirens were deafening now, and the flashing lights cast a strobe effect over the casino floor. The infected had gathered around the slot machines, drawn to the chaos like moths to a flame. We had to move fast. "The sprinkler system," I yelled over the din. "It's our only shot at a distraction, but the water pressure is low and won't hold for long. We've got one chance to use it." Karen nodded, her eyes focused. She was sharp, I could see it. "What's the plan?" "We'll head for the parking garage. There's a casino van parked. It should have enough gas to get us out of here, but we've got to be quick and stay together." I triggered the sprinkler system, and the sudden burst of water rained down from the ceiling. The infected's attention was drawn upwards as they howled and danced in the spray, their movements becoming more erratic. Karen and I took advantage of the distraction, slipping through the casino floor like shadows. The sound of the sprinklers muffled our footsteps as we weaved between the slot machines and gambling tables. The garage door was in sight, a beacon of hope in the strobe-lit chaos. We moved quickly but cautiously, adrenaline pulsing through our veins. The water from the sprinklers created a misty veil around us, obscuring our vision and making the air thick with the smell of chlorine and panic. But as we approached the exit, our hearts sank. Several infected had gathered in front of the door, drawn by the sound of our footsteps on the wet floor. They stood between us and freedom, a snarling barricade of teeth and claws. I pushed Karen behind me, raising my gun with a trembling hand. "We can't fight them all," she whispered. Thinking fast, I set an alarm on my phone for 1 minute and chucked it into the fray of slot machines. The infected swarmed towards the sound like sharks to chum. "Run!" I shouted, and together we sprinted for the door. The alarm blared, and the infected surged towards it, giving us the opening we needed. We dashed through the doorway, and I slammed it shut behind us just as the first of them reached us. The wood groaned under their weight, and I knew we had to move fast before they broke through. The parking garage was a maze of cars and concrete pillars, the dim emergency lights flickering like the last gasps of a dying world. The sound of the alarm grew faint behind us, swallowed by the echoes of our own desperate breathing. The air was cooler here, a stark contrast to the stifling heat of the casino. I spotted the van, a dull gray beacon in the sea of darkness. It was parked in the far corner, and we had to navigate the tight aisles, dodging the occasional infected that had stumbled into the garage. The van's keys were on a pegboard by the elevator, still attached to a plastic fob with the casino's logo. As we approached the van, I could feel the tension coiling tighter in my chest. The alarm had bought us some time, but not much. The door was unlocked, and we clambered inside, slamming it shut behind us. The engine roared to life, and we peeled out of the parking space, tires screeching on the wet concrete. The garage's exit was a metal grate, and I knew we had to time it perfectly. If the infected heard us, we were as good as dead. We drove in silence, the only sound the thumping of our racing hearts and the hum of the engine. As we approached the exit, I saw a horde of them gathered outside, their eyes reflecting the red glow of the emergency lights. My grip tightened on the steering wheel, and I took a deep breath. "Hold on," I told Karen, and floored it. The van smashed through the grate with a deafening clang, sending a shower of sparks into the night air. The infected surged towards us, but we were already accelerating down the ramp and onto the deserted streets of Detroit. The city lay before us, a ghostly tableau of abandoned cars and shattered glass. Our escape was not without casualties. Several of the creatures latched onto the van, their nails scraping against the metal as we sped away. I could feel the van's weight shift as they clung to it, their moans a chilling reminder of what we'd left behind. But we didn't look back. We had survived the casino, and now we had a chance to survive the city. The van's headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating a path to safety, or at least to the unknown. As we drove, the sirens grew fainter, replaced by the steady thrum of the engine. The air was thick with the scent of burning rubber and fear. We had made it this far, but we both knew the real battle was just beginning. We exchanged a look, our eyes meeting in the rearview mirror. It was a look of grim determination, a silent promise to stick together. We were two strangers in a city of monsters, but for now, we had each other. And in a world gone mad, that was all that mattered. The van jolted as we hit a pothole, and I gripped the steering wheel tighter. The road ahead was fraught with danger, but we had a plan. We'd find a safe place, regroup, and maybe, just maybe, we'd find a way to fight back against the infection that had claimed our home.